Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good Tuesday and happy 4th of July and Independence Day to you all around Alaska. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather. We are privileged to serve you with your own weather information, which of course you've bought and paid for already, but we're happy to decipher it and make it work for you. So thanks again for watching us here in Alaska Weather. And anytime you have questions, comments, or concerns, please let me know. David.Snider@noaa.gov is a direct way to reach me. You can always give us a call if you're just looking for the forecast at 1-800-472-0391. Weather.gov/Alaska is the place to start online, and then once you click the map, you'll be taken to your local weather forecast office that serves your part of Alaska 24 hours a day. Now, we want to make sure that you are up to date on some of the changes coming for the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit's site. Many of you use the site all around Alaska all year long, and it is changing in a big way. If you haven't seen some of those changes, today's the day to go take a look at that because we have updated the update day to July the 14th. What does that mean? It means we've been working very hard to get this squared up with what you need, what we know doesn't work quite as well as it should, and where you'd like it to be so that it works just like the old page, but does a lot of some really new cool stuff too. A lot of the design had to change because of some security concerns and just updated technology. It was on some really old servers, I think. But it should work better for you in the long term. However, as we move toward that process, we need to know from you what's working for you, what doesn't work, how would you like it to work better, and gosh, you know, can you break it? Yeah, let us know how you did that because we'd like to make it work for all parts of Alaska, whether you're on your phone, whether you're on your PC or your Mac, or whether you're just a casual user, but many of you are not, and so please do let us know. Here's the website. A lot of you have been using that, and we're trying to get through all your emails and your questions, comments, and concerns there. nws.ar.aawu.webauthors, it's kind of a long email, at noaa.gov. So that'll be on the webpage when you visit the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit's site there. So make sure you use that. Again, Friday, July 14th is the time that we're planning to switch this over, which means now's the time to check it out and see how it works. So when we make that switch, you'll know how to use that because it is considerably different. Here is a look at the satellite picture on Tuesday, this Independence Day. Will we gain independence from clouds in South Central? Doesn't look like it, not entirely, but it has been a gradual process for sure across South Central. Low pressure in the Gulf, a long wave trough all across the 49th state has allowed a lot of moisture to move in from the eastern Gulf and across the continent. A lot of this is moving south and west. So you can see that rotating in the upper level flow pattern here, as well as a lot of moisture over the Gulf swinging into central and southern southeast. No surprise that places like Annette over the last 24 hours have picked up almost another ½ inch of rainfall. In the meantime, showers and thunderstorms have blossomed across the interior. Across the middle and upper Yukon Valley, those have been traveling from west to east. Another cluster of storms has developed south of Fairbanks over the Tanana Valley and toward the Alaska Range. Those have been drifting south and southwest. Across South Central, not a whole lot of precipitation today, but just a really tough time scrubbing away the clouds. And you look out west, and if you're on the Bering Sea coast, you're saying, yeah, so what? That's a normal day in Alaska, right? You can see that the clouds are shifting around a little bit across the west with a ridge of high pressure here across the west coast. As that toughens up a little bit more and more of those clouds will start to vanish across the west coast, even as more moisture pours in from the west. Now, if you were to extrapolate the path of all these clouds well into the West Pacific, you would see that some of this moisture and certainly some of the heat that's going to try and build northward in the coming days out west is associated with a tropical storm way out by Japan. No threat of that reaching Alaska, but the moisture that's leaving that system is being pumped up into the North Pacific fairly close to our Alaska waters. In the meantime, low pressure will continue to sit across the Gulf, and you can see the clouds swinging around there. A lot of that will rotate northward towards southeast in the coming days. High pressure up across the North Slope is also locking in some areas of fog across the northern slope and across the Chukchi Sea. But one thing that's going to change here in the next couple days is a strengthening of the southerly wind working up through the Bering Strait and into the Chukchi Sea. That will also help to erode even more of the ice that's still there. And we'll take a look at that ice map in just a few minutes. Here's a look at the weather map. At the surface, we have low pressure across the northern Gulf at 1,016 millibars. Some light rain this afternoon around Skagway, Haines, and all the way out toward Yakutat. Here's those clusters of thunderstorms I was talking about, just north of the Alaska Range and then up across the middle and upper Yukon Valley. This was moving from west to east. This was moving south and southwest. High pressure across the north slope at 1,018 millibars there is locking in some light rain around Barrow to Wainwright and some areas of fog as well. St. Lawrence Island, and around the western tip of the Seward Peninsula toward Wales and Tin City, there are some areas of light rain. Another weather disturbance out across the west was working into the western Bering Sea. High pressure was trying to slow that down. That was closer to the Bristol Bay region. And on the east side of that, we saw some fog up across the northern sections of the Bering Sea coast and areas around Bristol Bay. Tonight's forecast keeps high pressure in charge of areas in southwest. Our disturbance out west works eastward just a little bit more, and periods of rain and some fog should be expected in the central Bering as a result. Not quite into the Pribilofs just yet. Areas from, Nikolsky westward toward Atka, probably looking at some rain and fog. Trough of low pressure across the northern Gulf will keep some showers situated from the capital city northward toward Skagway and Haines. And as you get into south central, don't be surprised to run into showers around the Talkeetnas and probably the northern Chugach, but it doesn't look like a lot of that's going to push a whole lot further southward toward the Kenai Peninsula or Anchorage. Up north, a few showers and thunderstorms may continue into the early evening hours. As we get into your Wednesday, notice warmer air is pushing through the central chain. Areas of rain and fog should be expected ahead of that, with showers around St. Matthew and the Bering Strait communities. Light rain expected for the Chukchi coast, with high pressure shifting eastward, and that may keep some fog across the Beaufort Sea coast. Showers around the Brooks Range summits, and then a widely scattered area of showers and thunderstorms from the upper Tanana Valley through the Alaska Range and into south central. High pressure south of Sand Point will hold at 1,022 millibars, and a large part of southeast will see clouds for the central and southern sections. Up north, you might get some breaks in the cloud cover and then a return to showers from Skagway out toward Gustavus and points northward. As we get into Thursday, high pressure still holding across the northern Gulf there, and it's trying to chip away the clouds for southeast, but showers will be in the region. A few showers and thunderstorms are possible across south central and into the Copper River Basin. Most of the interior should see a brighter day on Thursday with fewer clouds, but showers will linger across the Brooks Range. A steady south flow continues through the Bering Strait. Nunivak Island and over the Pribilofs will likely be looking at some rainfall and some gusty southerly winds at times. And central and western parts of the chain will be looking at a new wave of low pressure developing at 983 millibars. You'll also see more of a southerly flow, but it could be a little bit stronger, probably looking at least a gale as we get into Thursday afternoon. Temperatures today were cool under some of the clouds and wet weather for southeast, upper 40s to mid 50s for many locations. Ketchikan and Annette closer to 60 degrees, up around Hyder today. Around Prince William Sound, mid to upper 40s. Valdez was 64, Anchorage closer to 62, Homer 64 degrees, and Seward a cooler 58. As you got over into Rainy Pass and many locations there, it was in the upper 60s, upper 70s as you made it out toward the western end of Denali National Park. Not quite as hot in Fairbanks, but 74 there, 75 around Eagle, 76 for Fort Yukon. It was 71 degrees around Arctic Village. Anaktuvuk Pass had 63 degrees. The Arctic Coast in the 40s and 50s, 39 degrees. Our cool reading there in Kaktovik, one of the cooler spots today, 42 around Barrow, 51 around Kivalina, 54 in Kotzebue, 50 in Shishmaref, and 47 in Nome with Unalakleet in the mid-50s. Galena was 71. St. Lawrence Island in the mid-40s this afternoon with McGrath at 64, 61 in Bethel. Bristol Bay temperatures made it into the lower 60s this afternoon. Kodiak was 58, mid to upper 50s for the Alaska Peninsula. And we saw 47 around St. Paul, 52 in Adak, and 57 way out at Shemya. Now, overnight low temperatures will stay mild for the interior, mid to upper 50s there. Most locations just shy of 60. South Central in the upper 40s and lower 50s. Southeast in the upper 40s to about 50 degrees around the capital city. Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula and the chain in the upper 40s there. Dillingham might hold at 50 degrees. 51 for Bethel, 47 around Nome, and 39 for Barrow with a high there tomorrow reaching 50 degrees. It'll be a warmer day for you. Most of the interior from the upper Yukon all the way out to the YK Delta will hold in the upper 60s to even upper 70s as you get further east. South Central should have a much warmer day as well. We're talking about temperatures in the upper 60s to lower 70s for many locations, including those along the Matanuska and Susitna Valleys and Cook Inlet region. 63 and warmer for Kodiak, mid 60s for most of southeast. The sunshine makes a huge difference in that outcome of temperatures, right? 50 degrees around St. Paul and St. George, mid 50s for the Aleutians and the Alaska Peninsula. Bethel, you're looking at a high of 73 with Nome at 54. Flying weather, expect IFR conditions around the north slope there. Most of the interior, the passes, and all the way into southwest should be VFR through most of the day. You'll notice MVFR conditions, though, across the northern Gulf Coast into parts of southeast, including the inner channels, with IFR conditions around St. Paul, St. George, and most of the chain as you get into the morning hours. Look for some improvement out across the western coast in the afternoon. You'll see development of convection, showers and thunderstorms with that by the afternoon for many locations across the Alaska Range, the Talkeetnas, the Chugach, and all the way up into the upper Yukon Valley. MVFR conditions improve for southeast, so things should be better in the afternoon, but you may see more MVFR around parts of Prince William Sound through the afternoon, and some of that could also sag southward into the coastal plain of the north slope there. So be advised and be prepared for what you'll see in the afternoon. Anaktuvik Pass and Anigan Pass look pretty good, both at VFR throughout the day. Lake Clark and Lake Merrill Pass will be looking at visual flight roll through most of the afternoon, but watch for showers and thunderstorms to develop. Rainy Pass should see similar conditions there. VFR really most of the day, but convection's possible all the way around to Windy Pass and into Isabel Pass with VFR conditions through your Wednesday there. Mentasta Pass looking pretty good. Watch for showers and storms in the afternoon, and for Tenita Pass, VFR there. Tenita Pass, we expect to see marginal conditions through most of the day. It will pull back into Prince William Sound as we go through the afternoon. The pass itself looking to be VFR by the afternoon for tomorrow. Chilkoot and White Pass also looking at improvements through your Wednesday. Freezing levels, no surprise that with the heat we have that surface freezing line is not visible over Alaska at this point. So no stations tomorrow are expected to go below freezing in any great grouping. So it looks like 8 to 10, even 12,000 foot levels across the western coast, Norton Sound, Kotzebue Sound. The Gulf looking at levels above 6 to 8, even 10,000 feet. And over most of southeast, levels are higher than 8,000 feet. So a lot of warm air in place. Now, what does that mean for your icing potential? Pretty low risk unless you're flying high up there around 10,000 feet or above. There is a moisture stream moving its way through the Bering, but again, light to isolated moderates expected there. And if you're above 10,000 feet, that's an issue. If you're not, then you should be pretty much A-OK. Above 10,000 feet, also for levels of there in the northern parts of southeast, some light to isolated moderate there, but again, that's way high up there. I need the oxygen for that one. And widely scattered showers and thunderstorms across south central, again, always implies isolated threats for turbulence, low-level wind shear, and, of course, icing potential. The jet stream has our low pressure system sitting across the Gulf. The strongest winds are on the west and southern side at 125 knots. But notice the path that's on the eastern side. That's bringing up those 90-knot winds across the eastern Gulf and pushing more moisture northward up across the southeast region, the eastern Gulf, and the northern Gulf while it's battling that northerly offshore flow coming down through Cook Inlet right now. Out across the west, several waves of low pressure trying to push moisture into high pressure across the western coast. This is acting as kind of a blocking mechanism right now, holding back that incoming moisture, but it will be brief. Right now, though, it is effective. At 9,000 feet, you have that southwesterly flow working across the Bering Strait and across the west coast and the Seward Peninsula. That is helping to drive a lot of heat northward. Watch for those southerly winds to continue at the surface because of this. 30 to 40 knot winds there at 9,000 feet. Winds are between 20 and 25 knots up north, and an offshore flow right now, an east and northeast wind from southeast and across the northern Gulf at 25 knots. At 3,000 feet, winds are a little slower at that level, 10 to 20 knots generally from the east and northeast. Light winds around high pressure for south central, but here are those southerly winds again picking up across the west coast and the north slope, 25 to 35 knots across the west, and several waves of low pressure are seen out across the Bering as well. Turbulence should be pretty limited across the western end of the Brooks Range. The Kobuk and Noatak valleys may see some chop below 3,000 feet. St. Lawrence Island and the southern end of the Alaska Peninsula and the central and eastern chain also looking at some chop, as well as, again, that isolated threat with any developing convection. That's a look at your aviation forecast. I'll be back in just a few minutes with the rest of your marine weather. Stay tuned.
Coming up on Destination Tomorrow, we take a look at NASA's Aviation Safety Program. We'll look back at some highlights of the program and find out what the future holds for aviation. All this and more next on Destination Tomorrow.
Judy, tell me a little bit more about the icing protection system. Do all planes have it?
There's what we call an anti-ice system where you don't allow the ice to grow at all. That's if you got a very hot leading edge. You see that in jets. Then there's a de-icing system which has pneumatic boots, that the boots will wrap around that leading edge, they'll inflate and pop the ice off. So you let the ice grow and then you got to get it off. The pneumatic boots are typically what you see with turboprop aircraft.
Does icing affect planes in, say, a warm climate?
Icing occurs everywhere. You've got to be aware of it. I've got a pilot friend who told me the worst icing he encountered was flying from Florida to the Caribbean in July at 16,000 feet. The worst icing he ever saw. But icing really can occur anywhere and any time. One of the things we do here at NASA is to have better designs. So maybe a system that would automatically turn on the ice protection system if a sensor goes up. The short-term solution is to train the pilots and educate them about how to detect icing, how to be aware of it, train them how to get out of the icing environment if and when they need to. Ideally, icing is a non-issue in the future. We're working to get there.
For many of us, fear is the biggest problem when it comes to flying. We thought it may be helpful to present you with some statistics that may or may not be helpful to those of you who are fearful flyers.
First, your chances of being involved in an aircraft accident are approximately 1 in 11 million, while your chances of being killed in an automobile accident are about 1 in 5,000, proving that the most dangerous part of your flight is the drive to the airport.
One last fact. Statistically, you have more of a chance of dying from the food served on board the flight than being involved in an aircraft accident.
Most people who have flown in an airplane have experienced turbulence. NASA is working on new warning systems to help pilots avoid dangerous turbulence. Paula Vaden has more.
If you've ever flown in an airplane, you are probably familiar with turbulence. Even for the most experienced flyers, the sudden, sometimes violent, irregular air motion can be an unsettling experience. In most cases, turbulence is merely an inconvenience that passengers and flight crews must endure. But in cases of severe turbulence, the violent shaking can not only cause serious injury to passengers and crew, it can also be fatal. In an effort to help aircraft avoid turbulence, researchers at NASA are testing new onboard aircraft systems. The Airborne Research Integrated Experiment System, or ARES, uses experimental systems that detect turbulence minutes before an aircraft encounters it. This new system may allow pilots to avoid severe turbulence, making flying safer. I spoke with Neil O'Connor in the Crew Systems Branch at NASA Langley Research Center to find out more.
You can think of turbulence as any phenomenon in the atmosphere that's going to upset the airplane. Changes in wind that can cause the airplane to be disrupted from its normal flight. You can also get turbulence whenever you have wind rushing over the top of a mountain. The leeward side of a mountain can be very turbulent. You can also get turbulence wherever the jet stream is active. There's a high wind speed in the region of the jet stream, but slower right nearby. Thunderstorms can cause turbulence. Everyone knows right nearby the storm, but sometimes even 50 or 100 miles away in the clear air, you can get turbulence from a thunderstorm.
So Neil, how are pilots avoiding severe turbulence now?
For the most part, pilots have several simple options. They listen to the radio to hear if other pilots have already encountered turbulence in that area. So that means somebody's already been hit. They can also look at their onboard radar and try to, based on their experience, can extrapolate what they think might be, but it's not really foolproof. And they can also get a general forecast from the government sources or from their own airline.
Okay, we got some turbulence now. We're about 3 miles short.
Though seldom damaging to modern aircraft, turbulence is the leading cause of in-flight injuries among passengers and flight crews. On average, 58 injuries aboard aircraft are reported each year. 98% of these injuries occur when unsuspecting passengers or crew are unbuckled or out of their seats when an aircraft encounters turbulence. Currently, there are no instruments on board aircraft to detect turbulence before a plane encounters it. NASA researchers hope to change this by incorporating new turbulence radar systems within existing onboard weather radars. With this new radar system in place, researchers hope to provide pilots with enough warning to either avoid the turbulent area or at least give passengers and flight attendants enough time to return to their seats and buckle up.
The radar system itself will just be a software upgrade to the existing wind shear radar that's already on board the airplanes. The beauty of that, of course, is that since it's just an upgrade to an already certified piece of hardware, it should be relatively inexpensive because you're just incrementally changing what's out there already.
So Neil, tell me how exactly this new system's going to work.
The way it'll work for the pilot is that he'll flip a switch that's labeled turbulence, and then he'll have the new software running. It'll be running mostly at cruise altitudes where pilots typically allow people to move around the cabin. It's not a problem when you're climbing or descending because everyone's already strapped in. So if you have a turbulence encounter there, it's not a big issue because everyone's already buckled in. But we want to help make a difference at altitude when you don't always know there's going to be turbulence out there. And this new product will be able to increase the capability of the system and increase the pilot's confidence in the accuracy of the system, leading to a better, safer environment.
Besides radar, is there any other kind of research with turbulence?
Doing other research, both onboard and otherwise. The onboard system is called the in situ turbulence warning system, and that's a system that uses accelerometers on the airplane to measure what the airplane feels at a given moment. That'll be transmitted automatically to all other airplanes in the general area, along with the location. And a receiving airplane will take that data and adapt it to its own size and class of airplane, and then assess whether or not it's a threat to that airplane. And if it's a threat, then it'll tell the pilot. Another way of enhancing what we have now is improving our forecast capability. And that gets into modeling of the weather and other phenomena of the atmosphere to better understand what the potential is for turbulence.
So Neil, what are your hopes for this project?
Well, the ultimate goal, of course, is to increase the safety and reduce injuries caused by turbulence on the airplane. Right now, it's very easy to prevent injuries when you know you're going to have turbulence. The pilot says, hey, we got to buckle up for a few minutes. Everyone does it, no one gets hurt. But you don't always know the turbulence is coming. So sometimes if you don't know, people are walking around and the plane gets a lurch, someone's going to get hurt. And that happens now. So we know we can make a difference by improving the product.
That's it for this edition of NASA's Destination Tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. I'm Steele McGonigal.
And I'm Kara O'Brien. For all of us at NASA, we'll see you next time.
The ice is changing across the Beaufort Sea coast now. In fact, there are some open areas just offshore that are allowing small seas to build when the wind comes up. In the meantime, a lot of open water across the Chukchi coast up toward Barrow and even east of that now. The latest information is always available at weather.gov/Anchorage/ice. You can get that in the 3-month outlook as well if you'd like to learn more about what the prognosis is for how much of this ice will be gone in the next week, 2 weeks, even 3 or 4 weeks as you go into mid to late August and September, which right now is some of the thinking here for the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast, when some of that will open up enough for transit. Here's a look at Southeastern's forecast for Wednesday in the marine areas. A southerly flow across the Lynn Canal up to 15 knots with 3-foot seas, looking for light winds and small seas across the southern and central interchannels. Offshore winds south of Sitka, 10 knots with a 4-foot sea, and north and northwesterlies coming in to Cross Sound and from Yakutat in the northern Gulf, about 10 knots with 3 to 4-foot seas midweek. As we get into Thursday, very little change, a little bit of a shift in the wind direction, but not much in speed or wave height there. So you're looking at southerlies coming in from Sitka, 10 knots, 4 to 5-foot seas there. Light winds across the inner channel. Southerlies continue up around the Lynn Canal, and northeasterlies as you head into the northern Gulf. So again, Thursday looking fairly tame. As we look at Wednesday across south central, light and variable winds for Prince William Sound inside and outside the western Gulf down toward the eastern side of Kodiak Island. 2 to 3-foot seas there. Southwesterlies a little stronger in Shelikof Strait up to 15 knots, and southerlies coming up Cook Inlet. 2 to 3-foot seas expected for the midweek and back to work. South and southeasterlies all the way from the west of the Barrens into Cook Inlet, 15 knots with 3-foot seas there. Seas and winds diminish across the Shelikof Strait, and it looks like most of the area in the northern and western Gulf doesn't see much change. 10 knots and small seas expected there for your Thursday. For Bristol Bay, a southwest flow, 10 knots and 2-foot seas there. Southeasterlies a little stronger across the southern end of the Alaska Peninsula, 20 to 25 with 3 to 4-foot seas expected. South of Castle Cape to Chignik, 10 knots with a 3-foot sea on Wednesday. That becomes southeasterly as we look into Bristol Bay. Light winds and still small seas there, but not much change here across the Pacific waters. Southeasterlies will continue down the coast, 20 knots with a 5-foot sea and 4-foot seas across the Bering Sea coast as you head into Thursday. For the Aleutians, slightly stronger winds here across the central and eastern chain. Remember, there's a front working its way from west to east, so the winds will pick up a little bit more out ahead of that. The winds will diminish behind it, and you'll see a little less precipitation. 7 to as low as 5 or 6 foot seas as you move through Adak and Atka westerlies around Shemya to Kiska. But that will reverse course with the next low moving in from the west. You'll get east and southeasterly winds feeding into that. 25 to 38 foot seas there, and south and southeasterlies will diminish for the time being for the central and eastern chain on Thursday. 4 to 7 foot seas across the Bering and 6 to 9 foot seas across the Pacific coast for your Thursday. For the west coast, south and easterly winds will continue up into the Bering Strait, 20 to 30 knots there with 4 foot seas around the Kuskokwim Delta region, 9 foot seas north of Nunivak Island to St. Lawrence Island, and southeasterlies around St. Paul and St. George with 9 foot seas on a 30-knot wind. That should improve a little bit on Thursday. 7 foot seas expected by Thursday. We'll keep our southerly flow punching into the Bering Strait region with a lot of warm weather as well. 25 to 30 knots, and you're looking at 6 to 9 foot seas for Thursday. Across the Beaufort Seacoast, 2 foot seas are expected around Kaktovik to Dead Horse, 10 knots, again from the south and east. Southerlies from Barrow all the way down the Chukchi coast to 30 knots as you head outside of Kotzebue Sound with 7 foot seas there for Wednesday. Winds will pick up a little bit more from the west across the eastern Beaufort with 3 foot seas there. Southwesterlies north of Prudhoe Bay on 20 knots, still over ice, and south and southwesterlies toward the Chukchi coast, 25 to 30 knots as you go through Thursday. Recapping tonight's weather, don't be surprised to see some thunderclaps across the central and eastern Alaska range into the Talkeetnas. Showers there, and showers and thunderstorms possible across the upper Yukon Valley tonight. A front's moving through the Aleutians. As that moves eastward, southerly winds will pick up ahead of that. You'll see a better chance of sunshine across parts of the west and southwest coast tomorrow, and a better chance for widely scattered thunderstorms across parts of south central into probably the Matanuska and Susitna valleys, the Copper River Basin, and northward into the upper Yukon Valley. Southeast, showers there for you in the northern end around Haines and Skagway, maybe close to the capital city. Clouds southward, and as we get into Thursday, a better chance for more showers closer to the high terrain there. South central, some showers and storms around the Talkeetnas. Northward, a lot more dry and sunny weather for you all the way along the Yukon Valley. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather. We'll see you right here again tomorrow.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.